We're on a mission from God.
Hi, and indeed we are on a mission from God today because we're going to try and achieve no less than DOS Gaming Nirvana, or at least my interpretation of it. You see these three machines before you. You might have seen them if you've watched any of my other videos. I think I did a video on each one, and we're going to use these. They all need some kind of attention in one way or another, so we're going to give them what they need and then try and put them together into some kind of environment where it's going to be great to sit and play old DOS games. So, the first of the machines is this 486. So I did a video of this. It's a VLB 486, at least has a VLB graphics card in it. And when I built a 286 recently, all in these kind of mini tower cases, I got a few comments saying that all of the cases were wrong for each machine. So this particular one has a 2-digit high-low turbo display, and the 286 I built had a 3-digit turbo display, and people said that's just wrong, it should be the other way around. And at first I thought, well, what bloody difference does it make, because they both only ever display a maximum of 2 digits, so unless you get a DX400, which I don't have, but if you're displaying a 25 megahertz or a 66 megahertz or 33 megahertz 486, you're still only going to need a 2-digit display, so it doesn't really make any difference. But the more I thought about it, it did begin to bother me a little bit, so I'm going to actually swap the cases for these two machines. So the first thing we're going to do here is tear this 486 apart and empty the case. This isn't just going to be a video about case swapping. I've got some upgrades to do on these as well. Plus, when I took all of my ISA graphics cards out to do a video about benchmarking a couple of weeks ago, I don't think any of these machines have actually got graphics cards in them at the minute. So I'll kind of decide on a final graphics card for each one as well. But the ultimate aim of this particular video is going to be to create an area in this room for DOS only gaming, and to get these machines set up in such a way that it's easy to swap between them. And there is probably going to be another machine in this setup, probably an early Pentium, a socket 4 or socket 5. All of these machines are going to rock DOS only, apart from possibly the Pentium when I build it, which will probably have Windows 3 on it. So there's all the bits out of the 486. I forgot there was only a SX25 in this because I was trying to recreate my first PC when I built it. Might have to do something about that. Now, the reason why I emptied this case is because I want it for the 286. So I need to get that 286 apart next. And this is the 286 that probably started all of this. I only built this a couple of weeks ago and did a video, and quite a few people commented on the cases not being right, so we'll rip all this out and we'll get it into that 486 case, and we'll just go with the high-low. It probably does make a lot of sense in a way, because I mean, who cares turboing between 6 and 12 megahertz, so high-low is a pretty cool thing to have on this machine, I think. I'm pretty sure it won't look like it once I've edited all this, but you know how when you stop messing about with a single retro PC, it often ends up being an utter pain in the arse with all sorts of unexpected crazy stuff going on. Yeah, well, this is 3 machines working on them at the same time. This took a lot longer than I was expecting it to, and I had a lot of crazy stuff going on, but we'll get to that soon enough. Since the 286s and bits, it seems like a good time to do the first of our upgrades. So it's nothing terribly exciting, it's just a 287 maths coprocessor to go into that empty socket. This one's an 8 megahertz one, and while the processor itself is 12 megahertz, I understand from what I've read that there's some tolerance with 287 processors. They don't have to exactly match the frequency the way they would in a 386, for example. So we'll find out if it works or not soon enough. I put the Maths CoPro in outside the case because you can probably see the motherboard tray on this thing is tiny, and this motherboard hangs over the edge quite a lot, which means you won't be able to put things like memory inside the case because it would just flex the board too much. I've got posts all around the expansion slots, so they should be okay to pop the cards in and out. So the plan for this one, now that it's all together, is to use the 1 megabyte Trident card that I benchmarked recently, and we'll pop that in and see how it looks. Yeah, I think I saw this when I was benchmarking, or I saw it when I was building this machine the first time. This Trident card, you get some weird kind of corruption when you look at DOS. When you run things like directory listings, you get strange artifacts on the screen. So I think last time I tried a bit of contact cleaner and it seemed to improve things a little bit. So I'm going to give both the card and the slot a good scrub with contact cleaner and see if that makes any difference. Alas, no, it didn't. So I do think it's something to do with this motherboard. It seems fussy about graphics cards. So after this, I tried the chips 1MB card that I also did a benchmark of last time, and it wouldn't even recognize that. No output whatsoever. I know that card works fine on other motherboards. So the other card I had was the Oak, which I'd upgraded from 256K to 512. So I popped that in and that worked perfectly. So I guess this is the card we're going to have to go with. So once that was all sorted, it was just simply a case of putting the thing back together. And then, of course, there was the issue of that this used to be a 486 and it has a 486 case badge on. So we have to swap the stickers around to make sure that I know what it is. And then we've got this nice case with a high-low turbo button for the 286 and a 286 sticker, and all is cool. The eagle-eyed among you may have spotted that I forgot to put any drive bay blanks in the machine, so I have to take the lid off again and put the blanks in. And while I was at it, I had to actually bend the angled fastening part of the Oak card because it was too shallow. It wouldn't actually fit into the slot with that the way it was, so I had to bend it vertical. So I also took this opportunity to put a bit of gaffer tape on there just to hold it in place a bit better. So all that really needs to be done now is to boot the thing up, make sure that all of the lights are blinking the way they should, make sure the turbo display is showing what it should with the button depressed and not, and make sure the sound card's working correctly. And with all of that done, we have completed the first step to DOS Gaming Nirvana. Onwards, step 2 is the 386, and there isn't really much to be done here. It's mostly cosmetic. The yellow faceplates and the yellow CD-ROM don't match the case, so we're going to fix that. And the thing doesn't have a graphics card, and beyond that, it doesn't really need anything, so this shouldn't take long. So there isn't really much to say about this. It was just a case of digging out the bag of driveway blanks and going through it to try and find ones that vaguely matched, which was a reasonable success. And also the CD-ROM was very yellow, so took that out and replaced it with one of the Aztec double speeds. I think this one came out the 486 actually, because the 486 is a very yellow machine, so this might be a bit of swapping of yellowed stuff for not yellowed stuff. But in the end we ended up with a fairly nice even looking sort of colour on the fascia, and then it was just a case of putting the thing back together. I took it apart, not because I needed to, because this is a machine that isn't getting a case swap. I just took it apart just to give it a check over and just to sort of try and remember what was going on with this machine, because it's quite a while since I've looked at it. And finally, this thing didn't have a graphics card in it, so originally I'd planned to put the ET4000 that I'm having a lot of trouble with and it isn't running at the speed it's supposed to, so I put that aside for now to try and troubleshoot that. So this one looks like it might be a candidate to try this 1MB Trident out and see if that looks any better on this machine. And yeah, it works perfectly, so it's clearly not a problem with the card. It's just that 286 motherboard's fussy about its graphics cards. I forgot I had IBM PC DOS 5 on this machine as well, so that's the other thing. On the 286 I have DOS 6.22, which is kind of not really great. A, it's not period correct, and B, you can't use the advantages like MemMaker and things won't work on anything below a 386, so I'll leave it for now. But I think what I might end up doing is putting DOS 4 maybe on the 286 and running with PC DOS on this machine, and then DOS 6.22 on the 486. And just a case of putting the case back together. I remembered to put the expansion bay bracket covers on this time, so that's cool. And looking pretty sweet, ready to rock. And there you go. Step 2 of DOS Gaming Nirvana complete. Last but not least, the 486. So this machine has probably more than the other two added together to do to it. So we've got some cosmetic stuff. It's a yellow, very yellow case. So anything that isn't yellow stands out, as you can see from that floppy drive. So I'm going to try and match all of that up as best we can. I'm not sure I've got enough yellow stuff, but we'll do what we can. And I've got some upgrades for this machine as well. I've got a memory upgrade, a processor upgrade as well. And we're stuck with the graphics card for this one because I've only got one VLB graphics card, and that's the one that's in it. That's an S3 base card, so that works fine, and we'll be sticking with that. So we've got an optical drive that matches the case. Just need to try and dig out something for the floppy. In the meantime, I'm going to look at the memory on this thing because it hasn't got any. Well, it didn't have a second ago until I filled all of the slots. I got some new memory for this, so 1 megabyte sticks, 30-pin SIMs. I didn't have a SD RAM to go into the other slot, and it wouldn't boot. Mr. BIOS beeping away telling me that it couldn't read anything at bank 0. So out of curiosity, I opened up the 386 again and tried these sticks in there, and it wouldn't boot either. So I'm kind of wondering if these are ECC sticks. So I know that ECC, the number of chips should be either divisible by 5 or 3. These are divisible by 3 because it's 3. So I guess it's ECC. It could be parity, but I think it's ECC. Now the chips that were in the 386 have 9 pins, so they've also got some kind of error correction going on as well. But I guess they're parity. And what I did was I put one of those sticks from the 386 in here with the 9 chips on it, and then backfilled the rest with the new sticks with 3 chips on it, and suddenly it worked. So what I'm guessing is the first stick with 9 chips is parity, and it's disabled the ECC and allowed it to run as normal RAM. And then I just put the other remaining 3 sticks back into the 386 and popped one of the new sticks in there, and I got my 4 megs back in there as well. So we're going to roll with that. If you have any better ideas about what's going on here, please let me know. There's one more upgrade to go on while we're out here in the open. So I've got a processor upgrade. It's an interesting one, something I've never really had or dealt with before, and it's an overdrive processor. So we're going to pop out this 25 megahertz SX, and we've got an overdrive for DX266. Now, as I understand it with these things, it just takes care of all the voltage and everything for you. So all you really have to do is swap your multiplier to the correct value. So in this case, it'd be from 25 to 33, I think, and should be good to go. As simple as that. Yeah, look at that. So it's counted up to the 8 megs, and 486 DX2 CPU at 67 megahertz has even given us an extra megahertz. How cool is that? So it's just a case of putting it all back together and we can do some testing on it. In the meantime, I did find a slightly better floppy drive. It's just a little bit more yellow than the one that was in there. It's kind of ironic when you see all these people running around on eBay trying to retrobrite stuff. But I actually quite like it. I like something to look like it's been around for a few decades. I don't want it to look like I bought it in the shop yesterday. I want it to look like it's been around since the early 90s. So I haven't actually done any retrobrighting yet. I bought the stuff, the peroxide and stuff, but I don't really want to do it, to be honest. I think I'm actually even going to go onto eBay and look for a yellow floppy drive to go with this machine. And it just looks, it's a bit like, you know, some people are frightened of growing grey when they get old, but some people think it looks dignified. You know, a yellow in computer terms it's a dignified look. It shows age and wisdom. So yeah, I'm going to look for a yellow floppy for this. Oops. Yes, that is smoke billowing out the left-hand side of the machine. I was so fixated on the 12 megahertz, which I suddenly realised should have been 66, and I hadn't changed it. And I was going to have to take the whole thing apart again. And it was the smell that caught me first. Yeah, it was burning. I had to pull all the plugs out kind of quick. It's not as bad as it looks, though, which is cool. What it turned out to be was this thing didn't have a speaker in it originally. So I had a spare PC speaker, and I plugged it in, and I realised that I couldn't get to the bracket because the bracket's on the inside cover, and at that point I didn't realise I was going to have to take the front off anyway to reset the turbo LED. So all I did was I let magnetism do the job and just popped the speaker inside its sort of enclosure and let the magnet hold it to the side. And what had happened at some point was it turned so that the contacts were earthing on the case, and that caused the insulation on the speaker cable to start burning. And, you know, as long as I didn't go downstairs to get a beer at the time and it caught fire, it wasn't as bad as it looked, and it was no danger to ruining the motherboard or anything. Anyway, lesson learnt. Don't be lazy. If you've got a mounting point for something, mount it where it's supposed to go. So as you can see, I disconnected the speaker and it still worked, so phew. Okay, front panel off, a bit of diddling with the turbo jumpers, and we eventually got there. So we've got 66 and 33. I've set it so that when you push the button in, it actually turbos to 66, and when it's out, it's 33. So now that that's done, we can put it back together for the final time, hopefully, and you might notice that lovely, perfectly mounted speaker with no risk of shorting on the metal plating where it should be now, so that should be cool. You can see, if you look closely, the sort of glossiness on the black cable where that melting happened. I can't wait to see if it still beeps. So everything's cool now. All that remains is to put the lid on, screw the last bits and pieces together and boot it up, see if it beeps, see if the speaker's still alive, and then test the sound card. Damn, I thought I caught it on film, but yeah, it did beep. So, speaker's alive. So the 486 is done. It was a bit of a trial, to be honest, but it's back together again, so the three machines are good to go. Now the last thing to be done on here, of course, is the case badge. And I was going to put the old badge back on, but luckily I ordered one a while back from Geek and Spiel, who I always get my badges from on eBay, all the way over in the States, and I wasn't expecting it to, but it arrived this morning, actually while I was filming the end of this, so perfect timing. So we can stick that on there, and that matches the other cases, which is cool. Okay, here we are in the corner that is going to be DOS Gaming Nirvana, and yeah, that is a Mac right there. You might ask, what the hell is that doing there? So we're going to share its monitor, and we're going to use it as the centerpiece. Now, I've had this thing for a while now. I don't really know what to do with it, but I thought one good thing for somebody who doesn't really give a shit about Macs would be to compare it, because it's amongst its contemporaries in the PC world. Games were released for both, and we'll see how they compare and things like that. And we'll share its very nice, shiny Apple monitor as well. Right, the way we're going to do this is on top of the Mac monitor, you can see I've stuck a nice handy 10-way VGA splitter. The Mac monitor has a proprietary connection at the Mac end, but it's just a VGA monitor at the other end. And each box is going to have its own set of leads, so we're going to have a VGA, a power cable, and a sound cable coming from the sound card. I even bought a KVM especially for these machines before sort of realising that they were all AT keyboards and serial mouses. No, never mind. So it's just going to be AT keyboards for now to set this up, and I'll probably stick some serial mouses and serial rollerballs and things onto these at some point very soon. Nice excuse to get my only Commodore PC peripheral out as well, though we won't be using those shitty little tinny speakers. So we've got this funky 10-way VGA splitter from AliExpress. Didn't cost much money, and the VGA out goes straight to the Mac monitor, and I'm going to put the Mac in number 1 so that number 2, 3 and 4 match rather well with 286, 386 and 486, and number 5 will match with 586 when I get the Pentium. So I got this set of Cambridge Soundworks speakers from a bunch of crap that I did in my last video, I think it was. So I like these speakers. Funnily enough, this was one of the very first sets of speakers I got when I got my first 486, when I got back into retro gaming. I don't know, it must be 4 years ago or something now. And, you know, I paid a good £35 for them back then. I've since bought another pair, and I got those a bit cheaper because I bid on them, but they didn't have a power supply. And then I got these ones for virtually nothing. I like these speakers. They're not hi-fi, but they sound like they ought to. It sounds like what I remember half-decent PC speakers sounding like back in the day, and that's what I want. So we're going to use these. I'm going to share them on all of these machines. Now I've got a little 5-way splitter that runs the 5 sound cards. Well, it's 4 sound cards at the minute. Will be 5 when I get the Pentium built, and they all just run into the same set of speakers. So whichever machine's turned on gets sent through, and it's pretty simple and it works well. So all that remains now is to test it out. So let's fire up the Mac first. We hit button number 1 on the VGA splitter. We turn on the power on the switchable extender, and off we go. So slow. Be faster on a PC. Yeah, it's coming out of those speakers, not the Apple's own speaker, which is what I was wondering about. So as simple as shutting down the Apple, firing up the 286. Don't forget to flick the VGA switch over. Turn off the 286, turn on the 386 at the power, turn the VGA onto number 3, push the button on the 386, and off we go. And rinse and repeat for the 486, and it's a pretty damn easy way to flick between systems. So yeah, I'm really pleased with this. I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be some sound effects going on when these jets come zooming in. I guess it's just a memory thing. I'll have to fiddle about with it. me, DOS Nirvana Gaming Corner has arrived, for want of a better way of putting it. And yeah, I've got a Socket 5 board, I think, and I'm going to add another machine into there at some point soon, because now I feel inspired to do so, and I'm pleased with the way this has turned out. It's going to be nice to be able to just sit there and those machines are just ready to rock and roll and play some games. So that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you have enjoyed this trip to creating this little corner, and if you did, it'd be great if you consider giving me a thumbs up, subscribing, or leaving a comment below, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.